Welcome to Do It for the Gram and Enneagram podcast with your host, certified Enneagram coach, Milton Stewart, where we do it for the Enneagram, not Instagram. We make moves to improve our lives and those in our community. So if you've listened to part 1 and part 2, my interviews with Elizabeth Worm, you will know that we are in defense mechanisms. And so these episodes are going to be very specific to each Enneagram type's defense mechanism and kind of how it shows up for each one of them, because it's very important to understand defense mechanism. If you understand actually how to really get past maybe some blocks or hurdles that you may have in your own growth, because maybe you've done some growth, but you feel stuck. And a lot of times defense mechanisms are getting in the way. Intro music, let's go. I'm super excited to announce my new partnership with BetterHelp. This episode is actually sponsored by BetterHelp. If you are struggling, BetterHelp can help. You'll receive 10% off your first month when you sign on using betterhelp.com/doit. So I'm super excited about this partnership that me and BetterHelp have entered into, because in this point where everything that we're doing right now to connect with people is more virtual, it is so important. Mental health, I think that aligns perfectly with things that we're trying to do, things that I want to do, and anybody that I would refer or think that could be potentially beneficial to the audience. And I think BetterHelp is definitely one of them. BetterHelp is basically, it's online counseling or therapy. So you're able to actually get some counseling or therapy depending on what's going on, from licensed counselors and therapists around the country. And you get to be able to get some of that one-on-one mental checkup that you may need, and BetterHelp's able to help you. So just go to betterhelp.com/doit, and you'll get a 10% discount for your first month. What are defense mechanisms? So defense mechanisms are tricky because we can get so used to using them that we don't really recognize them in our lives. I know that was the case for me for sure. Defense mechanisms do not just kick in when we feel personally attacked, and that's what makes them even harder to notice. Defense mechanisms kick in when our Enneagram type ego feels compromised. So this can be a deep fear within us that we have not noticed yet, but the defense mechanisms are kind of like a protection system, kind of like your alarm system almost. And it's like the alarm went off within you, and now your defense mechanism is now ready to go defend your ego. So the worst part of defense mechanisms is that it keeps us actually from doing our actual inner work. Okay? It keeps us from actually being able to engage in our deeper inner work. So why are Enneagram defense mechanisms important? Defense mechanisms are important because if you allow them to go unnoticed or unchecked, you will never get to doing the deeper inner work that you actually need to do to really have growth and transform who you are and become truly a better person, where your type doesn't control your life. Or else you'll be stuck at the surface level of growth, and it will really be Enneagram mean, deep type of growth, basically. Some Enneagram memes are funny, but the real work is far from funny when it comes to Enneagram inner work. This is why being aware of your defense mechanisms and how to disarm them is going to be pivotal if you are talking about truly transforming yourself. How the defense mechanism is formed based on the law of 3, misconception of reality. So I got this from the narrative Enneagram school, which is the law of 3. And it talks about just there's a disconnection between different points. And so the law of 3 means that there are basically 2 opposing positions, and they create a triangle because there's another area that develops that has to either happen for them to either reconcile, or either has to happen to make those 2 opposing ideas, ways of being, ways of life, actually coexist. And so there's a third form. And the law of three is super important, and we'll go over that in another series because understanding that is pivotal if we're actually going to have a better world also. So we'll talk about that later. But for the nine's ego structure, it believes it is harmonious and peaceful as an ideal. Okay. You generally can hear this response from nines at times. I had a nine in a workshop say, "We bring the chill," which I think is a really cool shirt, but the nine's ego naturally believes as an ideal of who that person is harmonious and peaceful. So, in order for this idealization of themselves to stay intact, they must avoid conflict and separation. So, if you believe you are peaceful and harmonious, not that you can be, but that you are, and you avoid conflict and separation, which is the real world, then you end up with the defense mechanism of narcotization. And so narcotization it's a repetitive patterns that stop, distract, and make nines avoid dealing with what they really need to do or face. It has a numbing effect to it, and it can look like inaction or hyperaction by a nine. The inaction is all, and the hyperaction is all about avoiding an internal conflict of anything that causes separation or internal discomfort. So, this is the biggest thing around the nine. The nine has a lot going on when you talk about actually dealing with conflict. You have the regular type structure that already a lot of times forgets about itself, but also forgets about the wrongs that people have done to them, and it kind of puts it away and not deals with it. But then there's a whole nother level of the defense mechanism that is a pattern that continuously stops them because it is avoiding dealing with things that are conflictual, things that may create separation. It is avoiding that at the same time. So there's a defense, a wall that goes up that says, no, we're not going to deal with this because if I'm a peaceful and harmonious person, then I cannot be a conflict having separation going into type of person. So in order to do that, I'm going to numb out and act like it really don't exist. So I'm just going to be over here and act like it don't exist. So that's what narcotization is doing. And by acting like it doesn't exist, like I said, it's a numbing effect that either nines go into hyperaction, doing everything but what they need to do and what they need to face, or it's an inaction of literally going into some different patterns that allow them not to have to actually deal directly with whatever they need to face and deal with. Does your workplace stink because the culture sucks? Are you tired of tolerating people and wish you could all work together cohesively? Does going to work give you instant anxiety? If you say yes to any one of these, you should probably quit your job. But since you aren't going to quit your job, you should call Kaizen Careers. At Kaizen Careers, we are all about improving personal and workplace performance. We use a unique tool called the Enneagram. The Enneagram helps individuals and organizations become more self-aware. That self-awareness lends into helping organizations with communication, leadership, and conflict management, ultimately turning self-awareness into self-mastery and creating healthy workplace performance so you can improve your services and bottom line. You can reach Kaizen Careers at kaizencareers.com or 901-334-1644. So when you talk about counteracting the defense mechanism of narcotization for the nine, one of the things I recommend is inventory your day. So notice it first. Notice when you are stuck in a repetitive pattern that helps you avoid stuff. Okay. So the biggest thing is actually noticing when your defense mechanism happens because it's so unconscious until you bring it to the forefront to your conscious mind that you don't even realize you're doing it. You just automatically do it because your type structure is running in the background. It's running your systems. It's running your memories, your muscle memory, everything. It's running everything, the cells in your body. So we actually have to become aware of it. So inventorying your day for nines will actually give you a way of like, okay, how am I actually probably narcotization kicking in when something I need to face or deal with? How, in what ways do I not do that? And so actually capturing what you do during your day and being very specific, which is a little bit of work, would actually help you see just how much time and what you're actually doing with it compared to maybe what you need to face or deal with or confront. And then the next thing is address conflict up front in some way. Okay. So it may start with simply writing it down expressing it, telling it to someone you trust, and eventually addressing the conflict directly when you have the courage and proper amount of anger to do it. So don't turn a 30-minute battle into a cold war. And so nines can do this because nines can do passive aggressive well. But here's the thing, part of nines being able to have the ability to confront people and to create healthy boundaries is what I say in almost every nine episode. It is making sure that you are in contact with what angers you, with what bothers you, and what things you don't want and what things you do want. And so having and understanding that proper level of healthy anger allows the nine to be able to go into conflict to go against what narcotization is maybe happening for them, whatever they're numbing out to, so that they can actually address it and become a better person, a healthier situation, and that they're actually okay. So, in wrapping this up, for the nines, remember, narcotization, it is a repetitive pattern that stops, distracts, and makes you avoid dealing with what you really need to do or face. Okay. That is a big deal. It's a pattern. So it's when I say pattern, it's usually something you do. Okay. So looking at the repetitive things that you do sometimes, because nines usually have their own type of patterns, even if they're not maybe the most productive or helpful pattern sometimes, they still have their own patterns and ways of being. So really paying attention to their behavior and those repetitive behaviors is very important to see if it's actually a part of you narcotizing yourself from actually dealing with some things you really need to deal with as well. And so making sure you do that is very important. And then for the nine, making sure that part of your work, which is also tricky as well, because nines can narcotize themselves on the Enneagram, right? So here's the tricky part. So instead of dealing with something or actually going to confront a situation or issue, and that not only includes outside of yourself, but inside of yourself, it's very important to remember that nines can kind of narcotize their way into almost a little bit of anything. So you have to be careful. So even with the Enneagram, instead of dealing with something, nines could go read about a person, like, oh, maybe that's why they act like that. Or they go read about themselves, like, oh, that's a nine type of thing, instead of actually doing the work of dealing with it. So they have to be careful because that can also be a detrimental pattern and a defense mechanism of narcotization creeping up in a nine's life. So just wanted to make sure I mention that because that's super important. And I also wanted to thank you for listening. That's all for this short episode. If you want to help support this podcast, you can definitely help by becoming a Patreon supporter at patreon.com/do it for the gram. That's one way you can definitely help support the podcast. Some amazing things are coming on the way for this year that I'm super excited about. Some of those things include there is a free ebook. If you go to kaizencareers.com, and you go to ebook, you find the tab with the ebook. There's actually an ebook, a free ebook out there, and another one I have coming out. It's short, quick to the point, but has some good points in there for Enneagram work and Enneagram practical things that you can do. Also, I am currently teaching the first cohort of my Kaizen Complete Enneagram program, and it is absolutely amazing. Has some absolutely phenomenal people within the group. And I'm excited to announce my second cohort will start August 5th. Okay, it's going to start August the 5th. And I'm excited tonight. It'll be August the 5th. The registration will come online really soon, so you can sign up for it. It is definitely limited spots. I am not going to do over 20 people because I definitely want a tight unit of people who are truly ready to do inner work together, learn more, push themselves, challenge themselves, and really develop. And the KSEP program, Kaizen Complete Enneagram program that I teach is a 12-week program. It's online, and there's more information on it if you go to kaizenacademy.thinkific.com, which I'll put in the show notes as well so you can link from there. But that's all I have. So next time you feel your defense mechanism, narcotization creeping up, take a deep breath and then figure out what you need to address and express. Make a wise choice and do it for the gram, the Enneagram, of course. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.